Hi everyone, my name is Christine Berry and I'm one of the peer career advisors here at Virginia Tech Career and Professional Development. So today we'll go over some resume and cover letter basics. An outline of this presentation includes purpose of resumes, some things to include in your resume, tips for a successful resume, things to avoid on your resume, purpose of cover letters, and examples and formatting. So overall, the purpose of a resume. The purpose of a resume is just to market yourself. You want to summarize all of your experiences, personal, educational, and work experiences, and you want to showcase those and show employers what you will bring to the table if you're hired. You really want to convince employers that you will be successful in this position. And a resume can really help you reach that next step of the job search, which is getting the interview, getting your foot in the door. A successful resume can definitely get you to that second stage and get you to an interview. So here we have a quote from an employer. "I like to see very well thought through resumes with results in bullets. This is a skill lacking beyond college, so the sooner students adopt adding results to a resume, the better they stand out." So some resume basics. We really want to use a readable font that is easy to read. So examples of that would be Arial, Times New Roman, the type of font that you would write an essay in for class. And a good rule of thumb for font size is 10.5 to 12-point font. That's still readable, but also allows you to keep your stuff to one page. So when applying to regular industry jobs, you want to keep your resume to one page generally, and 0.5 to 1 inch margins on all sides. And absolutely no templates. It is much easier to add things and change your resume around if you just type it directly in Word, and templates can kind of mess with that. So some good language to use on your resume would include active verbs to start bullets, and no personal pronouns like I, me, ours, we, any of that. So the 5 main components of a resume include a heading, objective, education, experience, and skills. Some additional components, these are optional, would include activities, so on-campus clubs and activities like that, leadership, related coursework, you would include classes that you've taken in that, lab skills, projects, and community service. So for your heading, some of the basic stuff that is absolutely needed are your name, your email, and your phone number. So your address is really optional, but if you want to put it on there, you absolutely can. So you really want your name to start out with a larger font and put it in bold, and then your email and your phone number under that. That way they can contact you. And it's also really, really good to include your address because, as you can see here, it lines up to 3 lines, and you can also put your college address and your permanent address or your home address on your resume and line it up with those 3 lines. And you can also include websites, so like LinkedIn or anything like that. If you wanted to include those, that is an optional thing to put in your heading. What's absolutely necessary is your name, email, and your phone number. So next is the objective statement, and this should immediately follow your header. It should be at the top. This focuses the theme of what you're looking for. So this will change for every application you send in and every resume that you give to someone. It would include the position type, time period, and special interests. And you really want to keep it concise, so you want to keep it to a sentence fragment. We have some examples here. So an example would be, to obtain a summer internship in computer science for summer 2020. Something like that, short, 1 sentence, typically 1 line, would be great. We have some specific for the job fair or role specific, so you could name drop a company in your objective statement. All depends on what you're applying for and when. And usually objective statements are optional if you're applying to a really specific job. It's probably not needed, but if you're distributing your resume at a career fair, you really want to keep that on there so that when they look back at your resume, they know what you are looking for and what you're interested in. So next would be the education section. So you would begin with the current degree you're pursuing or the most recent degree that you've earned. You want to list additional degrees in reverse chronological order. So that means most recent first. Include degree level, majors and minors, completion date, institution name, city, and state. And use Virginia Tech to reference our university. Our school usually markets itself as Virginia Tech, so you could absolutely write the full name, but it honestly would probably benefit you more to write just Virginia Tech because that's really what we market ourselves as, and that's typically more recognizable. So the next section would be experience. So these experiences can range from work experience, research experience, volunteer projects, student organizations, conferences, anything. You really want to include the position, organization, location, and then dates. So you want to use bullet points in this section as well under your header of the position, organization, location, and dates. You want to add those bullet points in so that you can emphasize your responsibilities and achievements and also highlight the skills that you earned from that experience. Now this can be broken up into multiple sections. You could, separate work experience and leadership experience to move certain activities and experiences up, and depending on where you want them to be in your resume, whatever fits, your achievements can really be however you choose. And you want to list these experiences under this section in reverse chronological order. Again, that means most recent first. So here is just some tips on how to craft your bullet points. You really want to start with mentioning the problem or situation, including an action verb, include the results of what you did, and then you also want to quantify. That is super, super important. So quantifying can really help include some details and give the employer a good idea of the scope of what you did. So here our example is, designed a brochure to attract students to attend the event, which increased attendance by 20%. So there they start with this action verb, described what they did and the results of what they did, and also added those numbers and quantified the results of what they did. And this goes back to the quote that we saw earlier about talking about the results of your achievements and what you've done. Including results in your bullet points is very, very impactful. So here are some more examples of what something in the experience section would look like. Here we have, the position bolded and first, comma, organization here, Virginia Tech under it, and then also the dates. And the reason for, including this position first before the organization is that a lot of employers will care more about what position you held and what you did in that position rather than where it was. Where it was is obviously very important information, but generally they care more about, what the position was called and your title. So we put that first in bold, and then we include the company, organization, location, as you can see here, Charlotte, North Carolina, and then dates, and then followed by some bullet points. As you can see, these bullet points have a lot of numbers in them. So budget of 50,000, subcommittee of 4 other students, an event that hosts 1,000 students. So those numbers obviously kind of give an idea of how big or small of a group you worked with, and really helps nail down what kind of skills you gained from that experience. Next would be a skills section. So for a skills section, you really want to include those hard skills. These skills would be things like computer skills, programming languages, foreign languages and fluency in those, certifications, and lab skills. So that's more of the technical skills. Things you would not want to include in a skills section would include soft skills and unrelated activities. So this we see pretty often as people will include communication, teamwork, customer service in a skills section, and you don't want to do that. You only want to include those hard skills and those technical skills. What we do recommend though is that you keep those soft skills on your resume, but instead of putting them in a skills section, you can build them into those bullet points that we saw earlier. This will really help you name drop those skills that you earned and also kind of tie them back to a specific experience within your sections. So definitely keep those soft skills on your resume, but not in the skills section, only in the bullet points. So overall, just some tips for a successful resume. You always want to be 100% truthful. You do not want to lie on your resume. Definitely go over the spelling and grammar on your resume. Focus on transferable skills like communication, teamwork. Those soft skills definitely are transferable skills that you can mention in bullet points. Use keywords from position description. Now, this is a super, super important one. A lot of times when you're applying for a specific job online, they'll have, skills that they want listed out in a candidate. And what you can do is go through that job description, choose out those specific keywords, and then build them into your resume. So that's why we say every resume that you have and that you submit should be different from the other ones, because you really should tailor it to that specific job. So if someone wants somebody with strong communication skills and can work in a small group, you want to take that from the job description and build them into your bullet points and into that resume for that company. Another tip would be to quantify, like we mentioned earlier with those bullet points. Adding in those numbers is really great detail. You want to customize your resume, tailor it to each specific job, and definitely, have somebody look over it and get some feedback on it. Keep references on a separate paper. This is also very common. People will will include their references information on their resume or write references available upon request. And we recommend that you keep that off, because if an employer is interested in, contacting references or would like to request references, they'll usually ask and then you'll submit them separately. So nothing about references will go on your resume, but definitely keep that information just in case they ask for some references. Now, some resume don'ts. Don't use phrases such as responsibilities included. Now, we recommend against this mainly because you don't want to just explain what your job duties were. You want to highlight more of the skills that you gain from it rather than just what you did. Don't use resume templates. Like I mentioned earlier, it makes it difficult to make adjustments. So when you get a new job or you graduate or you want to add stuff or take stuff off, it can be kind of hard because it limits the space, because it has kind of a unique setup on a Word template. So we recommend just writing it directly into Word. Another resume don't would be to include routine job duties such as making copies. You definitely want to, instead of listing off your responsibilities, like I said before, you want to highlight the skills that you gained. So don't use long sentences or paragraphs. That's why we recommend that bullet point format. It makes it easier to read, easier and quicker to read. And employers are more inclined to read shorter sentences and bullet points rather than a huge paragraph. And do not submit the same resume to every employer, regardless of the position. So I mentioned this too, you really want to tailor your resume to each job that you're applying for. You really want to match your resume to that job description and pull out those keywords and embed them in your bullet points and your experiences in your resume to make you, more competitive for each job. And also that objective statement that you don't want to have, the wrong company's name in your objective statement when you submit it. So it's always good to, make a separate resume for each one and tailor your resume to each job. Another resume don't would be include references available upon request. This is just general information that would just take up a line and take up some space. Employers will ask for some references if they are interested, and they will let you know if they want you to provide that information, so you can keep that off your resume. And the biggest resume don't, I think, is to don't use color. Unless you're a design major or a major with a portfolio, we recommend just keeping it straight up black and white. Based off the information that our office gets from employers, we found that they really prefer just straight up black and white resumes for standard industry jobs. Here's just another statistic that is helpful for these tips and helps kind of keep everything in perspective, is that the average amount of time recruiters spend on a resume or spend looking at your resume is about 8 to 10 seconds, which is a very short amount of time. And that is definitely why we recommend against using, large paragraphs and big chunks of text, because they only spend 8 to 10 seconds looking at it. They're really not going to sit there and read a whole paragraph of your experiences and all of that. So that's why it's really, really important that you break up your descriptors into bullet points, because it's easier to read and it makes it more likely that they're actually going to look at it. So now we're moving on to cover letters. Now the purpose of a cover letter is to connect your experiences on your resume to a position description. So again, just like with a resume, you want to use keywords that you find in that job description. You want to pick 2 to 3 experiences and skills to highlight in your body paragraph of your cover letter, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like later in the presentation. And you do not want to restate your resume, because usually employers will get your resume and then they'll get your cover letter. So you don't want to just repeat that information because they already have it. A cover letter, this is the time where you can really go into deep detail and really explain the skills that you have and that you gain from a particular experience or two. So you want to tell why your skills and experiences are relevant to that job. And that's why it's extremely important that you go through the job description here so that you know what the job is, and so that you can adequately connect your experiences and your skills to this job. So here is an example of a cover letter, and this is available in our career planning guide on our website. You can go to career.vt.edu and look for that career planning guide in a link on that website. But here we have an example cover letter, and as you can see, there's an opening paragraph, a body paragraph, you could have 1 or 2 of these, and a closing. So you generally want to keep your cover letter to 1 page, just like your resume. And as you can see, it's best arranged into 4 paragraphs, so you can, split that body paragraph into 2. So here's some basic information on how to kind of set it up. Here you have Dear Mr. and Mrs. Doctor. If you can find specifically who the recruiting manager is or the hiring manager is, you can include their name specifically, which would be awesome. If you're a little bit unsure, a good rule of thumb is to write Dear Hiring Manager. That is significantly better than To Whom It May Concern. It sounds a little bit more friendly and sounds a little bit more specific. So it's kind of, directed toward a specific person without using their name, because you can't find that information. So that's what you can write here. And there's no need for this address and information up here if you're emailing it, which is typically what happens. So if you're submitting it online, the address and stuff of the company is unnecessary. So for the opening paragraph, you really want to introduce yourself and state why you're writing this, how you learned of the organization, or if you have any connections to the company, that would be great to include in the opening paragraph. So how you learned about this organization position, and some basic information about yourself. So just an introduction. In your body paragraph, you want to highlight why you're interested in this employer or this type of work. And this is really where you would describe the skills from your previous experiences. So you want to demonstrate that you know enough about the employer and position so that you can relate it to the experience you have. And that way you can really sell yourself and really, really name drop those qualifications that you have. This is why doing research on a company and reviewing the job description becomes really, really important. Because you can't adequately connect yourself to this company in this position without, doing solid research beforehand. So in this body paragraph, you really want to just explain in more detail specific items in your resume. You don't want to go over everything, mention everything you've ever done. You really just want to focus on a main 1 or 2 experiences. That way you can, go into detail and really sell yourself based off the skills you earned from those previous experiences. So you really just, the biggest purpose of the body paragraph is to make that connection between your skills and your experiences and this experience at this company or this position. Now for the closing paragraph, you want to indicate you would like the opportunity to interview for the position, or you can state that you're going to follow up. Typically we say around 2 weeks, like, oh, follow up in 2 weeks. And if you put this in your cover letter, make sure that you follow up. If you say you're going to follow up, definitely follow through with that. And state that you would be glad to provide the employer with any additional information. And this is extremely important, is to thank the employer for his or her consideration. Thanking the employer is extremely, extremely important at the end of a cover letter. And then you would finish it off with sincerely, your name, and then physically sign it if you can, if you're sending it in physically. So those are just some cover letter basics. The basic formatting, again, typically it would be 4 paragraphs, but you would follow the same format. So opening paragraph, body paragraphs, and closing. So the 3 key takeaways from this is to tailor your materials to the position and field, to have many others review your materials for content and errors. You really want to make sure everything is consistent on a resume and a cover letter. You want to make sure that there's no typos or grammar issues, because that obviously wouldn't look good. And you want to make your materials easy and fast to read. Employers spend a lot more time on a cover letter, looking at a cover letter, than they do a resume. So that's why that bullet point format is extremely, extremely important. And that's also another reason why templates on a resume aren't preferred, because it can be kind of difficult to see like where your education is, where your experiences are, it kind of mixes with that setup that I mentioned earlier. If you type it directly into Word, it's very easy to find all of your sections, very easy to find, specific information, and, bolding your header, bolding your position, bolding your name will really help that information stand out, and that's really important. And again, that bullet point format helps make it way easier to read and makes it more likely that they'll actually look at the content of your bullet points. So that is definitely what we recommend. So you can definitely make an appointment at our office for someone to look at your cover letter or your resume. Our office is located across from Acomas Hall. And again, here's that website, career.vt.edu. You can find that career planning guide that I mentioned and a lot of other information and resources related to pretty much any kind of career-related concern. Here's the phone number for our office. And right now we're doing virtual mini appointments. So you can schedule virtual mini appointments with peer career advisors like me. Those are usually 15 minutes long, or you could schedule a 30-minute virtual appointment with a full-time advisor. And we can look over your resume and cover letter, or really talk about anything related to career concerns or anything like that. You can schedule these virtual mini appointments by going to your Handshake, vt.joinhandshake.com. You can go to the Career Center tab and then make an appointment through that. Thanks.